Hi, my name's Sloane. I'm 32, and something happened to me that I still don't know how to talk about without my voice cracking. You ever have your life pulled out from under you in total silence? No fights, no warnings, just gone. One morning, you're in love, building something real, and by sunset, you're a ghost in your own home. I used to think I was in control of everything. Turns out I wasn't even holding the wheel, and if I'm being honest, part of me still wishes I hadn't found out why. Hey, if you've made it this far, take a breath and get comfortable. It gets messier from here. Trust me, I lived it. If you're into stories that don't flinch when things fall apart, go ahead and hit like, maybe subscribe so you don't miss what's next. And if you were me, standing in that silence, what would you have done? Tell me in the comments. I'm really listening. The first thing I noticed was the quiet. Not the gentle kind that floats after dawn, but a heavy, loaded silence, the kind that waits. Sunlight spilled across the marble floor of our penthouse like a stage light, picking out the details. My Balenciaga heels by the door, the cracked mug Ezra always used, lipstick still on its rim. Everything looked set, like we were in the middle of a scene, paused mid-frame. I called his name once, then again, louder. No answer. At first, I thought maybe he'd stepped out for coffee. Ezra was a morning ritualist, a fresh Americano, a short walk, no phone. But his keys were gone. So was his coat. The framed photo of us in Cannes, usually perched beside his old film school award, was missing. Only the pale imprint on the wood shelf remained. I crossed the living room slowly, stomach tightening. The energy was wrong, too curated, like a hotel room someone had just checked out of. The bedroom confirmed it. Half the closet was stripped bare, no coats, no shirts, the drawer where he kept his watches, empty. His side of the bathroom sink was wiped clean. Even his cologne was gone. The smell lingered like a ghost, sharp and citrusy, disappearing by the second. No note, no text, not even a passive-aggressive, "we need space," just absence. I grabbed my phone, no missed calls. I tapped his name, it went straight to voicemail. I tried again, same. I opened Instagram. His profile, gone. Not just quiet, blocked. I checked Twitter, nothing. TikTok, Snapchat, erased. Like I'd been scrubbed from his feed. I sat down on the edge of the bed, the mattress giving slightly under my weight, and whispered, "What the hell is happening?" A push notification slid across my screen. New post from Jax Lennox. I swiped it away without opening. My stomach turned. I opened my texts. Still no reply. My last message from last night blinked back. Home late, interviews ran long, save me some sushi? It had been a lie. And now, something told me, Ezra knew it. I stood up, stumbled into the bathroom, gripping the edge of the sink like it could anchor me. I stared at my reflection. Hair perfect, eyes tired. Lipstick from last night smeared slightly, like a mask starting to crack. Then I saw it. The wall above the sink, usually covered by a poster of our first film, was bare. The nails still stuck out of the plaster, lonely. He hadn't taken it. He'd removed it. And that, somehow, hurt more than anything. I tried to pretend everything was fine. The next morning, I showed up to the Today Show taping in a blazer sharp enough to cut glass and heels that made me feel taller than I was. I laughed. I charmed. I dropped anecdotes about late nights on set and Ezra's obsession with vintage lenses, like my life hadn't fractured less than 24 hours ago. On the ride home, I stared at my reflection in the town car's tinted window. A public face stared back. Cheekbones, smirk, practiced ease, but my fingers kept tightening on the phone in my lap. Still no messages, still gone. The notifications didn't stop, though. "You okay?" From a stylist I hadn't spoken to in months. Didn't expect that, from someone I barely knew on set. One cryptic, "Guess he found out?" No name, no context, just cold dread curling in my stomach. Then came the whispers. On set of a shoot the next day, the makeup artist whispered to the assistant while touching up my concealer. A production intern, accidentally, left a tab open on the monitor. Gossip blog headline, "Power couple Sloane Wilder and Ezra Calhoun split." Sources say she wasn't alone in her trailer. I closed the window, told myself it didn't mean anything, but the words burrowed in. I wasn't just the one he left. I was becoming the villain in someone else's narrative. That night, I scrolled through Jax Lennox's Instagram. His new post, a blurry black and white shot of someone laughing, fingers laced through his. The caption, "When no one's watching, we still burn." He wasn't stupid. He knew exactly what that implied. I stared at the screen, mouth dry. My finger hovered over unsend on the last DM I'd sent him. Don't post anything dumb. Not now. It was too late. The image already had thousands of likes. I opened our old group chat, the one with V, Ezra, and a few of our friends. The messages stopped the day before he left. My last text, a joke about how I burned dinner. Ezra had reacted with a laughing emoji. That was the final digital trace of him, a pixelated laugh before the silence. I messaged V separately. "Did you talk to him?" Her reply was almost immediate. "Yeah." And? "He's not coming back, slow." I didn't ask how she knew. Didn't need to. I closed the chat, dropped my phone face down on the table, and looked around my glass-walled condo with its designer furniture and giant empty spaces. It had never felt more like a showroom. Everything around me glittered like a movie still, and I'd never felt more fake. By day 5, the silence had a shape. It pressed against my skin like humidity, invisible, inescapable, suffocating. I drove to Ezra's old production studio downtown, half hoping someone might slip up and mention where he'd gone. His name was still on the door, but the receptionist barely looked up. "He's not here," she said, flipping through a clipboard like I was invisible. "Do you know when he'll—" "He left. Indefinitely." Pause. A glance. "He told us not to forward anything." I thanked her, pretending that didn't feel like another door slamming. Next stop, the rooftop restaurant where we'd had our first real date. I ordered his drink, whiskey, no ice, 3 fingers, and sat alone, pretending I wasn't waiting. I left when my stomach turned at the smell of it. He wasn't anywhere, not physically, not digitally. Ezra Calhoun had become a ghost I couldn't chase. Then V came over. She didn't text, didn't call, just appeared at my door with her keys and that look, the one she used to give me in high school right before telling me someone died. He showed me the screenshots slow. I didn't speak. Messages, hotel receipts, the location tag from the shoot you said ran late. Her voice cracked. "You didn't even cover your tracks." I blinked. He was working all the time. He barely looked at me. That's not a reason. That's an excuse. She didn't say it cruelly, just flat, like she was tired of cushioning the truth. I folded in on myself. "You didn't think he'd find out?" "No," I said quietly. "Or you thought he'd get over it?" I looked at her. "I thought we'd fight, yell, cry, then figure it out." V stared at me, long and hard. Then, "Ezra doesn't do scenes, he edits." The line hit me harder than I wanted to admit. Later that night, I opened Instagram. My hand hovered over the new post button, and for once, I didn't want to perform. So I wrote, "I made mistakes. I hurt someone who deserved better. I don't need sympathy. I don't need redemption, but I'm not going to lie about it anymore." It went up with a black square. No hashtags, no filters. The comments rolled in. "Finally, some honesty. You only care because you got caught. Respect for owning it. I unfollowed months ago. This seals it." I closed the app, sat in the dark, and for the first time, the silence felt deserved. It happened by accident. Of course it did. I was scrolling through stories while waiting for my coffee, a mindless habit, my thumb moving before I could think. Then I froze. The clip was from a party in the hills. Pan over string lights, a champagne tower, someone's dog in a sequined bow tie. And in the blurry background, just for a second, I saw him, Ezra, smiling, alive, and beside him, a woman. Long red dress, hair pulled into a soft, effortless knot, her hand on his chest, his smile folding naturally, easily, like I'd never existed. I dropped my phone, literally. It clattered on the cement outside the cafe, screen flickering. A barista asked if I was okay. I wasn't. That night, I texted V, "Who is she?" She replied an hour later, "Callie Monroe, photographer, not industry. Kind, from what I hear. Kind." I stared at that word so long it blurred. The next night, I made sure I ran into her. Not an accident this time. Callie's solo show had just opened at a gallery in Echo Park. Intimate portraits, soft light, a touch of grit. I arrived in black silk and red lipstick, the armor of old Sloane. She saw me the moment I walked in. "Hi," I said, with just enough edge. I know who you are," she replied calmly. Her tone wasn't cold, just precise. Her eyes met mine without fear. "You came for him?" I laughed. "Curiosity, mostly. Wanted to see the woman who replaced me." "You weren't replaced," she said. "You were released." It stung more than it should have. "I loved him," I said quietly. She nodded. "And hurt him deeply." Something cracked inside me, but I didn't show it. Callie stepped closer. "He's not the man you remember, and I'm not here to compete with your memory. But if you think walking into my show will rattle me," she smiled, "you should have worn red." I stared at her, speechless. Then I turned and walked out into the night, heart pounding, heat in my ears. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. But I did feel it. The clean, sharp edge of humiliation. Not the theatrical kind. The real one. The kind that slices silently and leaves a mark long after the audience is gone. Back in the car, I looked at myself in the mirror. The makeup was perfect. The light behind me glowing. But for the first time, I saw what Callie saw. A woman who mistook the camera for the truth and lost everything in the edit. They told me it would be a soft segment, a redemption arc, a chance to clear the air. The producer even smiled when she said it, like she was handing me a gift. I knew better, but I still said yes. Hair perfect, outfit curated, words rehearsed. I walked into the studio with my chin high, even as my hands trembled in my lap. The set was ice white and chrome, styled to look like a living room no one actually lived in. The host greeted me with bright teeth and polished pity. Then the surprise happened. Midway through the segment, she turned to the audience and said, "Joining us for a different perspective, award-winning director Ezra Calhoun." The air vanished from my lungs. He walked in without looking at me, sat down across from me like I was just another guest. He looked good, rested, quiet. I hated that it still hit me that way. The host smiled wider. "Let's talk honestly. Sloane, you've faced criticism." "I made mistakes," I said, cutting her off. My voice shook. "I lost someone I loved. I was selfish. I thought I could have both, intimacy and invincibility. I was wrong." Silence. Ezra didn't even blink. The host turned. "Ezra, would you like to respond?" He nodded slowly. "It's surreal," he said, hearing her say this. "For months, all I wanted was a conversation. But then I realized I don't need one." He looked at me, really looked. "Some things can't be unpacked. They just end." I swallowed hard. "So that's it? You're just done?" He didn't answer right away. Then, "I'm not angry. I'm free." The words landed like glass cracking under weight. The host shifted in her seat. "Do you believe in second chances, Ezra? With trust?" He smiled faintly. "No." The audience murmured. I could feel the heat rising under my skin. I wanted to scream, to break the set's pristine calm. Instead, I said, I was drowning in my own image. I thought if I controlled the story, I could control the pain. Ezra didn't flinch. "That's always been your strength, and your prison." The segment wrapped. We shook hands. Cameras off. Backstage, V grabbed me. "That was raw," she said. "And real." I nodded, heart pounding. She paused. "You finally stopped playing a role." And just like that, for the first time, I wasn't acting anymore. I left LA without telling anyone. No press release, no cryptic Instagram story. Just a silent drive up the coast with my phone powered off and a bag full of oversized sweaters I hadn't worn in years. I headed north, chasing a memory. Sometime around midnight, I pulled into the gravel lot of a two-star motel in Santa Barbara. The neon vacancy sign buzzed softly above me. The clerk didn't recognize me, or pretended not to, and handed over a key without a second glance. Room 6, peeling paint, the smell of old air freshener, a window that looked out onto the back of a dumpster. It was perfect. I dropped my bags and sat on the edge of the bed. The mattress sagged, and the silence pressed in. Not aggressive like it had been in the penthouse, but tired, real, like the room had seen other people crumble here too, and didn't expect much from me. This was the place where Ezra and I had shot our first short film. We were broke, delirious from caffeine and ambition, living on gas station burritos and stubborn hope. I remembered the night he first touched my hand here. Not with seduction, with reverence. He'd loved me then. I didn't cry. I didn't feel deserving. The next morning, I walked down the street to a 24-hour diner, ordered the cheapest coffee, took out my laptop for the first time in weeks, not to check socials, not to read gossip. I opened a blank document, and I wrote. Not a memoir, not an apology, a story, a character, nameless, bruised, unfinished, sitting in a motel room, wondering if a single choice could erase a life. The words came slow, then fast, like they'd been waiting. I stayed in that room for 3 days, ate cold noodles, took long showers, walked barefoot on creaky carpet. Nobody called, nobody cared, and I didn't post about it, not even once. I started sleeping again, not out of peace, but out of exhaustion, a real kind, the kind that comes when you stop pretending you're fine. On the fourth morning, I woke up with the sun on my face and the word enough scribbled in the margins of my script. And for the first time in months, I believed it. Not enough for him, not for the public, but for myself. 3 months later, I stepped back into the city with a finished script, a sunburned shoulder, and nothing to lose. The screenplay had a quiet violence to it. No glossy redemption, no neat ending. Just a woman sitting in the wreckage of her own creation, trying to remember how to breathe. I didn't give her a name, didn't need to. She was me, only braver. V sent it to an indie director she knew from film school, Marlon Cheng. He read it overnight, called me the next morning. It's raw, he said. Unforgiving. You ready to bleed on camera? I didn't hesitate. Yes. We shot the film in 4 weeks on a shoestring budget. 1 camera, natural light. Half the scenes were improvised. It didn't matter. Every frame felt like truth. I didn't wear makeup for most of it. My voice cracked in scenes that weren't supposed to be emotional. It didn't feel like acting. It felt like letting go. The premiere was held in a converted church in Highland Park. Peeling wood, string lights, folding chairs. I wore jeans and no jewelry. V wore something sparkly, as always. Before the lights dimmed, she squeezed my hand. You ready? No, I said, but I'm not hiding anymore. The room went dark. 90 minutes later, the film ended in silence. Then came the applause, slow, then rising, not thunderous, but real. I stayed seated as people turned in their chairs to find me. And then I saw her, Callie Monroe, back of the room, still, unreadable. When the crowd thinned, she approached, her eyes softer than last time. You didn't ask for pity, she said. You asked to be seen. I nodded. She held out her hand. I took it. This wasn't a film, she added. It was an autopsy, and somehow, a resurrection. I didn't have words. I only breathed. Ezra wasn't there. I knew he wouldn't be. I'd stopped hoping. And still, walking outside afterward, past the flickering lights, the crumbling curb, I felt something unfamiliar humming in my chest. Not pride, not closure, a beginning, one no one gave me, one I built myself. The film didn't win awards, it didn't go viral or get picked up by a streamer, but it traveled, through private screenings, shared links, whispered recommendations. It became something small and quiet and true, and for once, that was enough. I stayed in the city, but not in the skyline. I moved into a second-floor walk-up in Silver Lake. The ceilings were low, the plumbing unpredictable, and the kitchen tiles had visible cracks. but it was mine. And for the first time in years, I woke up without performing for anyone. V came over with takeout and fresh wine every Friday. She started leaving behind her laptop and storyboards. One night, after too much Merlot and not enough restraint, she said, "We should start something." Like therapy? No, like a studio. I laughed. What kind of studio? Stories about women like us, not saints, not monsters, just complicated. You want to build an empire out of our damage? She smirked. Exactly. We called it Studio Bear. The tagline, no heroes, just humans. We bought the domain, built a website that crashed the first week. We wrote manifestos at 2 a.m. We cried over pitches and fought over casting. It was messy. It was alive. And slowly, people began to notice. Directors, actors, writers, women with stories the industry had no shelf for. They came with their rage, their regret, their brilliance, and I listened. Not as a brand, as a woman who'd finally shut up long enough to hear someone else's voice. One afternoon, I opened our inbox and froze. A short message. You didn't ruin his career. You gave him permission to leave a part of himself behind, just like you did. See Callie. No flourish, no pity, just the truth. I sat with that for a long time. I thought about all the ways I had tried to erase my guilt, with silence, with spectacle, with a film. But guilt wasn't the point anymore. Growth was. A few former colleagues reached out, not to apologize, just reconnect. A wardrobe assistant from a series I'd ghosted, a young actress I'd once brushed off in a hallway, a casting agent who remembered my meltdown in 2019. Their messages weren't warm, but they weren't cold either. Glad to see you're still standing. You said what most of us can't. You seem different. Maybe I was. Maybe the version of me they remembered had been edited too tight, cropped for applause. Now, finally, there was room to breathe. I didn't plan to see him again, but life, or maybe irony, had other plans. The indie film scene loved a second chance story. Our little Studio Bear project had gained enough traction to get invited to a mid-tier awards show. Nothing glitzy, but it came with gift bags and a red carpet and awkward networking over lukewarm wine. I wore black, always safe, always sharp. V was buzzing beside me in a silver suit, rehearsing our in case we win speech, which I had no intention of delivering. I was still wrapping my head around being in the room. Then I saw the name on the nominee list. Ezra Calhoun, for a documentary on loss, made entirely with found footage and no narration. I stared at it for a beat too long. He's here, V said beside me, low. I know. We didn't speak again until after the ceremony. Neither of us won. My shoulders relaxed the moment they announced someone else's name. V looked mildly disappointed, then shrugged. Better this way. I didn't answer. Backstage, he was standing alone, sipping sparkling water out of a paper cup like it was whiskey. Same Ezra, clean lines, dark suit, steady posture. But something was different. His eyes were gentler, less guarded. He noticed me and nodded. Sloane. Ezra. A pause. You look. Don't, I said. Let's not go back to old dialogue. A flicker of a smile. Fair. I watched your documentary, I said. Twice. That many? I wanted to see if I'd show up in the frame. He looked at me, not unkindly. You did, just not how you think. I stepped closer. I don't regret the film I made, or what I said. You shouldn't. I didn't make it for forgiveness. I know. We stood there in the hum of backstage chatter and cheap champagne. Then he said it. You've changed. I let the silence hold the truth before saying, I stopped editing myself. He nodded. That's something I never learned how to do. He extended his hand. I took it, briefly. It didn't linger. It didn't need to. You did right by yourself, he said. I wanted to cry. Not from sadness, but from the release of carrying a weight I no longer needed to drag behind me. You too, I said. He turned to leave. I didn't follow. I walked the other way, into the night, into a city that didn't care about my shame or survival. And for the first time, I didn't feel like a fraud in my own skin. Morning sunlight spilled across the table like a quiet blessing. No filters, no soft boxes, just real light, coming through dusty blinds in a corner cafe 2 blocks from my new apartment. I was alone. Not lonely. There's a difference. My coffee had gone cold. I didn't mind. I was scribbling in a notebook with smudged ink and a torn cover. Across from me sat a 20-something actress, nervy, talented, wildly unsure of herself. She'd sent Studio Bear a short film script at 3 a.m. 3 weeks ago. It was a mess. It was brilliant. She looked up, twisting her fingers. What if I mess it up? You will, I said. 1,000 times. She blinked. But that's the only way to do it honestly. Her shoulders dropped an inch. After she left, I sat for a while longer, watching the world move. A mother pulled a sticky toddler away from the pastry case. A couple argued softly about bagel toppings. A barista cursed under his breath as foam overflowed. Real life, raw, boring, beautiful. My phone buzzed. A message from my mom. You sound happier lately. I recognize your voice again. I stared at it, heart flickering like static. I didn't reply right away. Instead, I walked. Through side streets, past murals and cracked sidewalks and someone's forgotten bicycle. I wasn't late. I wasn't being watched. I wasn't being anyone. Just me. When I finally looked at my phone again, I opened the group chat from Studio Bear. V had dropped a link to a new project pitch. The subject line read, Unlikable Women, Season 1. My fingers hovered over the reply. I typed, Let's make them unforgettable. I put the phone away. No post, no announcement, just one step forward. The ocean was only 15 minutes away. I could smell the salt already. I didn't think about Ezra, not out of bitterness, but because the story had already ended, and I was writing a new one. No edits, no retakes, no apology tour, not a spotlight in sight, just the sun, and this version of me, finally unafraid of its light.